Welcome in to the Go Vols 24/7 podcast, along with Ben McKee. I am Ryan Callahan, here to discuss the latest addition for the Tennessee men's basketball program. A big pickup here for the Vols, who have landed Ralph Scott, a small forward from IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida. Ben going to break it all down and give us an idea of what Tennessee can expect here. This is the top 50 prospect nationally. Ben, what can you tell us about the newest addition, the first addition to Tennessee's 2026 men's basketball recruiting class?
Yeah, borderline 5-star is what Tennessee is getting because Ralph Scott is ranked so highly by us at 24/7 and across the board with the other recruiting services as well. But we have him as the number 35 overall player in the country, the number 16 small forward, and the number 8 player from Florida, although he is originally from Bermuda, and has had quite the interesting recruiting story, but one that we have come to expect under Rick Barnes, because this is another late bloomer on the recruiting trail. Now, this wasn't the summer before he is set to enroll in school, or August, like we've seen with guys like Zakai Ziegler, Tobe Awaka, Troy Henderson, and then even later than Troy Henderson on this year's team, Clarence Massamba from France, and then Ethan Berg from Israel. Those guys were kind of late finds on the recruiting trail, and Ralph Scott wasn't a late find strictly to Tennessee, but a late riser on the recruiting services, or not the recruiting services, but the travel ball circuit in general. Was kind of playing with IMG here and there, traveled and transferred to one school to the next, and finally stuck at IMG and was playing for one of their better teams, and got discovered over the summer, or teams started to become more aware of him and started to receive more offers, and he has skyrocketed through the rankings as a result of that. So this is a big pickup, Tennessee's first commitment in the class of 2026, and it's a big one because he's essentially, as the number 35 overall player in the country, a borderline 5-star. I believe for basketball, Ryan, you may know, we hand out 28 5-stars for basketball players, maybe 30, somewhere around there. So a fringe 5-star here for the Vols.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. Really interesting prospect, and given the fact that he has been kind of a late bloomer based on his timeline here, it says he got his Tennessee offer in August. I see that Syracuse just offered here in the last few weeks, along with Purdue, which hosted him on an official visit. The other official visits were Texas A&M and Houston. So given the kind of late rising nature of his status as a prospect and his recruitment, I guess, do you have any sense of why he flew under the radar for a while? Is it because he's from Bermuda? Is there more to the story there? And is he, sometimes guys are highly ranked because they are, have a higher ceiling. Guys that maybe not be as at their highest potential entering college, but have a high ceiling for down the road. Sometimes because guys already are pretty dominant, given that he's at IMG Academy, a pretty high level program. I would imagine he may be more of the latter, but is he more of a maybe developmental prospect, or is this a guy that we could expect to be kind of a day one immediate impact type player at Tennessee?
Yeah, I'll add two things before I answer your question. The first, we only have 15 5-stars currently in the class of 2026. I did not realize we handed out that few 5-stars on the basketball.
Well, that'll be expanded later if I had to guess. I don't know for sure, but yes, still relatively early for that class, I guess.
Yes, I would as well, but I mean, these guys are not the early enrollees that football has, but this is the 2026 class. I thought we would have more than 15 at this point, but they will expand, I'm sure, to your point, for sure. So maybe not as much of a fringe 5-star as I initially thought, but still, number 35 overall player in the country is the number 35 overall player in the country. That is stout recruiting right there. And you mentioned his official visits to Houston, to A&M. He also took one to Purdue. I do think it was more of a 3-team race between Houston, Tennessee, and Purdue, and Houston being Tennessee's biggest competition. He was here for the Georgia game for his official visit. Ralph was, and exiting that official, going into his Purdue official, it was thought that Tennessee and Houston was neck and neck in the teams to beat. And I don't know if you know this, but Houston, a heck of a basketball program right now under Kelvin Sampson. Tennessee learned firsthand in the Elite Eight last year, unfortunately. So anytime you are recruiting against Houston and beating Houston out and beating Purdue out for that matter as well, you're doing something right. And I think a big reason is because of what Tennessee has done with Dalton Connect and Chaz Lanier the last 2 years. We can touch on that more in a second. But to answer your question about early impact or maybe being a bit of a raw prospect, I think it's that he's more of a raw prospect. You never want to count somebody out this early, but he has all the intangibles that you love. But again, he was a late bloomer, and I think that will carry into college a little bit, not in a negative way, but I, defensively, I think he'll be able to help right away. But where does the offense come from? He has shown an ability to make shots and get to the rim, and not only get to the rim, but some big time finishes at the rim when he gets there. But he's got good size. He's got long arms, big time athleticism, a big frame, as I mentioned, and I said long arms. He has a 7'3" wingspan at 6'8". So it's for me. I look at it more as more of a raw prospect right now, but just a freak athleticism that you can throw into the game, and some way somehow he's going to find a way to make an impact. But in terms of becoming who he will be down the road, there will probably be a bit of a grace period there. But when you rank this high and you have the athleticism and the length that Ralph does, and Tennessee believes in his defense already, he'll be able to have an early impact. I think it's just a matter of, okay, where's the offense and how big of an impact is he able to have because of, and I think that would be dictated by where the offense is at.
Yeah, interesting. You mentioned the Chaz Lanier and Dalton Connect. As we think about those maybe more in terms of transfer portal recruiting, but I guess that there has to be some carryover to even high school recruiting, right? That Tennessee's getting a lot of mileage out of the successes they've had with those two guys. Is your understanding, was that the kind of the biggest factor in his decision, or what? How did Tennessee win out in a battle like this that was kind of between, it sounds like at least a few teams that came in here pretty late? How were they able to win a battle like this?
Yeah, I would say Rick Barnes was probably the biggest factor, but closely behind Rick and his ability as a head coach and being established as he is. I would say that that it was the development of Dalton Connect and also Chaz Lanier this past season. You talk to Ralph, and he talks a lot about Rick Barnes and just how established he is and his program, and how he's going to help get guys ready for the next level. He's going to win. So Rick Barnes was probably the biggest aspect of it. But I mean, we know what it is these days. It's about, in order to be great recruiting, a great recruiter, you've got to be able to show them that you can develop them and help them get to the next level. It's that, and then of course the NIL component of it. But I'm not going to touch on the NIL component of it, because I don't think Tennessee only got Ralph Scott because of that. I think they got Ralph Scott because of Rick Barnes and because of their track record of developing players and getting them to the league, getting them an opportunity at the next level. And Dalton Connect and Chaz Lanier, certainly some big time bullet points in that regard. I think it helped them land Nate Ament. Now, Nate and Rick have a very unique relationship. I mean, it's got to be one of the closest relationships that Rick has had in a high school recruitment. But that relationship was what landed Tennessee its highest ranked recruit ever, the number 4 overall player in the country in Nate. But you also look at Nate and him being a wing. I know a lot of people kind of initially look at him as a power forward because of his size. We had him ranked as a power forward, but he's going to play the 3, and basically only play the 3, that small forward position at Tennessee. And I mean, look, he's versatile. He'll be able to slide inside if Tennessee needs him to, and play the 4 a little bit this season, but he's mostly going to be a 3. And I think it's much more likely that he slides over and handles the basketball if Jacoby Gillespie needs to come out of the game, or playing some of that too. If Rick really wants to go big with the lineup and put Cade Phillips at the 3, and then you got Felix Akpar, JP Estrella, or Jalen Carey down in the post, then you can put Nate Ament at the 2. And I think it's more likely he plays more of the 2 and the 1 than he does the 4, because he is a true 3 even at that size. And because of that true position, what I'm getting at is I think he saw what Tennessee was able to do with Dalton, and put the basketball in his hands and draw things up for him, and how much Dalton improved from day one at Tennessee and until the day he was a first-round pick. And Chaz more of a 2 guard than a 3, but there are some similarities there, and how much Chaz delivered in a similar position over the course of his year at Tennessee. So the development with what they've done, yeah, it's the transfer portal, but you're still taking guys, and they're getting better over the course of their time at Tennessee. I think that was a selling point for Nate Ament, and I think it pays off once again here with Ralph Scott and his decision as well.
A little more here from Travis Branham of 24/7 Sports on Ralph Scott. He said he was born in Connecticut, moved back to his family's home country of Bermuda at a very young age, then moved back to the U.S. just 2 years ago, enrolled at a small private school in Lakeland, Florida, before transferring to IMG. So interesting backstory there, and interesting prospect as well. Plenty more to discuss about Ralph Scott committing to Tennessee. We'll get to that more in just a minute. Welcome back to the Go Vols 24/7 podcast. Along with Ben McKee, I am Ryan Callahan on this edition as we break down Tennessee's latest addition for the men's basketball program, Ralph Scott, 4-star class of 2026 wing from IMG Academy in Florida. Before we move on, wherever you get your Go Vols 24/7 podcast, if you would not mind taking a moment to give us a rating and a review, we would appreciate it. It would help us bring more people to the family and continue to bring this podcast to you as well. And if you're not already on Go Vols 24/7, please subscribe and join the site at 30% off for an annual subscription. Great time to join right now in the middle of football season, and with basketball season obviously just around the corner. Plenty of coverage on the site about this commitment, plenty more as Tennessee football goes through its first open date of the season. Recruiting coverage, always plenty on the site, and plenty of coverage here on Ralph Scott's commitment already up on the site as we speak. Yeah, Ben, this is you kind of alluded to it. Tennessee seems to find these guys who are late risers. Is that, it seems somewhat by design. Is there anything in particular that leads Rick Barnes to go after these types of prospects? Is it just kind of a case by case thing, or how does that kind of happen on such a regular basis?
It is case by case, but I think it's very much they are as good at it as anybody in the country, I would imagine. I don't have actual evidence of this, but just covering Tennessee and just knowing how unique the culture is, that they stick to their plan. They stick to their prototype. Well, what they look for in a player, they don't deviate. They do not. They're not willing to cut corners or sacrifice here, sacrifice there because of a player's talent. It could be the number 1 overall player in the country. If that player does not fit what they believe in and what they are 1,000% looking for, they will not bring that player in. If he's the number 1 player in the country, the 50th overall player in the country, or the 550th player in the country, they just do not deviate. And I think that's why you see them bring in so many late bloomers is because they trust themselves. They trust their evaluations. And if, again, kind of going off of what I just said, if they feel like that player really fits them to a T, pun intended, then they will bring them in. They don't really look at the recruiting rankings in that regard, that they're going to allow Troy Henderson, who was not ranked when he committed to Tennessee. They're not going to let that dictate whether or not they bring a player in. And I know that to a fan, that sounds like, well, of course, like their college basketball coaches. Rick Barnes is a Hall of Fame coach. Why would he pay attention to the recruiting rankings and let that dictate whether or not to bring a player in? Ryan, firsthand fifootball coaches who have allowed the recruiting rankings to dictate bringing in a 5-star when the offensive line coach is saying, no, we should not bring in that 5-star because he's not a 5-star. So I think they we hear this all the time, but they don't really care about what people outside of the program think on this or that, that they really trust their evaluations. They believe in who they feel like they need to add to the program and what that criteria is, and they don't deviate. So it is case by case, and I do think there's going to be a lot of turnover after this year's team because you have so many older guys. So they're going to be bringing in several guys, and I think that gives you a little wiggle room to take a chance on somebody. But again, this is the number 35 overall player in the country after all. So there's a lot of talent there, but also quite a bit of developing to do as well. So case by case basis, but I think they do as good of a job of anybody in the country of evaluating players and sticking to the plan.
With that being said, there was one other announcement expected today, and I believe by the time this podcast airs, it will have already taken place. But Ben, what can you tell us about Bo Ogden, who was also supposed to announce his decision this afternoon? I guess our understanding of that, at least at this point.
Yes, Bo Ogden, the 4-star. He is also a wing. I guess that's the other thing I should throw in on Ralph Scott is I mentioned he's a small forward, and he truly is a small forward, at least in the conversations I've had, is that Tennessee is truly recruiting him as a wing. But he's very versatile in today's positionless basketball. I'm sure he'll play multiple positions, but he is viewed as solely a wing. Bo Ogden also viewed as a wing, but a little on the shorter side compared to Ralph. 6'5" is what we have him at. But a small forward from Westlake High School in Austin, Texas. He is the son of Chris Ogden, who is the general manager for Texas. He played at Texas, has coached at Texas for a long, long time. He also coached at Tennessee under Rick Barnes' first season. And Bo actually, from my understanding, stuck around and lived in Knoxville for 3 years. Chris Ogden got the Texas El Paso job, if I'm not, no, it was a UT Arlington job that Chris Ogden got after his first year on Rick Barnes' staff, and then eventually joined Chris Beard at Texas, if I have my years correct, and then also stuck on with Rodney Terry as well. So a Texas lifer is Chris Ogden, and his son. We are recording this a little bit early, but at the time that this podcast is being published, we believe that Bo is or has already committed to Texas. At least that has been the writing on the wall. He is supposed to have made his decision at 2 p.m. Eastern at his high school there at Westlake in Austin. And just Tennessee did everything it could have here. There was just – it was going to – take a miracle to pull this one off for Tennessee just because of all the ties to Texas being right there in Austin. Texas basketball truly wanting Bo Ogden, not just because his dad is on staff. So it would have taken a miracle. Tennessee did everything it could. Bo was here for the UAB game for his official visit. Everything went well. He thinks very highly of Tennessee basketball. He's referred to Rick Barnes as a grandfather. Steve McClain, Tennessee's assistant coach, has ties to Texas and Bo as well. And again, they did everything they could have here. There's just too many ties to Texas to overcome that one. So at the time of this recording, that is our expectation that Bo is going to commit to Texas tomorrow. But hey, it is recruiting after all. Maybe we have a second podcast that we're going to have to record here between the time we finish recording this one and publishing it. But our understanding is that he is Texas bound here on Monday night when we record this Ralph Scott commitment podcast.
And before we get out of here, Ben, did want to ask you this. As we mentioned, this is the first commitment of the 2026 class for Tennessee. Ralph Scott is with this edition. It's obviously pretty far out. Still got to go. We're not to the fall signing period yet. We've seen Tennessee add guys in the spring, and we obviously know the transfer portal such a big factor. And as you alluded to, we don't know who all might leave Tennessee after this season. So still a lot of things to be determined. But at this point, what else should we be expecting in this 2026 recruiting class for Tennessee? Is it too early to even say, or are the Vols looking for multiple other guys in this class?
Tennessee's looking for multiple guys. I do think that this is a broader conversation for a separate podcast, but Rick Barnes and me and Wes have had this conversation a couple of times on previous commitment podcasts. But Rick Barnes is much he much more appreciates the transfer recruiting than the high school recruiting, because high school recruiting, you're flying to go visit the kid at his high school. You're traveling to go watch him play travel basketball during the summer, and you're doing those things multiple times throughout the year. You're hosting them on an unofficial visit, possibly two official visits, because you can host basketball players on two official visits. There's a lot that goes into high school basketball recruiting. Now, not as, maybe, I don't know what the right word is. Maybe it's not stressful, but not as stressful as football recruiting, because you're not recruiting as many guys. But there's still a lot of events that coaches have to attend, and I think at this point in Rick's career, he much prefers the transfer recruitment, where you're evaluating tape, you're sending an assistant coach for sure to go see the transfer, and Rick will travel to go see transfers as well. But in some instances, you're evaluating the tape. You sign off on it. You get him to Knoxville on a visit. Rick does his thing at dinner, drops him off at the airport, and I mean, that's how they got Chaz Lanier. Is Rick Barnes did his thing at the big dinner, the Saturday night that Chaz Lanier was in town, and Chaz's family felt very comfortable with Rick, because from my understanding, Rick put on a show in a good way at the family dinner, and so he much prefers that, of just, let's get the transfer in here after we evaluate the tape. I spend
It's
24, 36 hours with him, and we either get the commitment or we don't.
it's over in a
So
week or two, one way or the
yeah,
other. It's over in a week or two.
and I mean, it sounds so much better than what I described with the high school recruiting. So I would expect them to be pretty transfer heavy. But at the end of the day, even with that being said, like any good CEO in college sports right now, I think Tony Vitello does a great job of this. I think Josh Heupel does a great job of this. Rick also knows that you can't build your program and have sustained success off the back of the transfer portal. You have to have a foundation from your high school recruiting. I mean, you even look at this team. Jacoby Gillespie might be the best player on the team. Will probably be him or Nate, but Jacoby's a transfer. Aside from that, and Felix will be your starting five. He's a transfer. So you fill in where your needs pop up from year to year. But Cade Phillips, great high school evaluation, helped set the foundation of the program. Great leader. He's going to be a key contributor this season. JP Estrella should be a key contributor if he stays healthy. Nate Ament, that's on the back of high school recruiting. And there are others. Troy Henderson's going to be your backup point guard. You have others that yes, the transfer portal has been really, really good to Tennessee basketball, but you still have to have a foundation from the high school ranks. You can't depend on the portal year in and year out. And some years you're going to take more than others. And I do think that, moving on from the Zakai Ziegler, Jabari Meshack, going a little bit further back and tying in, Santiago Vescovi, Olivier Cumwa, Josiah Jordan James, like the last 2 years of guys that have moved on. You're on to this next phase of this next chapter of Rick's chapter at Tennessee, Rick's story at Tennessee, and there's been a lot of turnover, and so you had to go a little more heavy in the portal this past cycle, and you'll probably have to do it again, because you are going to lose Felix, Jacoby, Amari Abram. I'm blanking on somebody else that they're also going to lose, but there will be some transfers that you can replace. But also, I forgot to mention that they go out and they find Clarence Masamba, who's a true freshman. They go out and find Ethan Berg, who, although he's 23 years old, he's just listed as a sophomore on the roster. So you do already have a nice foundation. But you have some guys that are also getting ready to move on. So maybe you're not bringing in as many guys as you did last cycle, but the transfer portal they'll certainly keep an eye on. And I say all that to say I don't know an exact number on how many guys that they would like to bring in. I would think off the top of my head it's 3 or 4, just because of the more I talk about it, the more I realize that actually guys are going to be back next year unless they transfer out, because Bishop Boswell's a sophomore. You brought in Amari Evans. You brought in Dwayne Brown. You do have quite a bit on your roster now, even with the turnover. But all that to say that it's setting up for a big month of October. And I think we'll start to learn more about this 26 recruiting class for Rick Barnes by what they do here in October. They have Manny Green, who will be here the weekend of October 11th, which is the middle of Arkansas.
Arkansas game, yeah.
The Arkansas game. So coming up here in 2 weeks, and then the big weekend for Tennessee basketball is the final weekend of the month, the weekend that the football team is at Kentucky. That Sunday, the day after, when Tennessee basketball hosts Duke for the exhibition that night in a sold-out Thompson Bowling, they're going to have firepower from the recruiting rankings in town. I mean, this has to be up there with one of the all-time recruiting visits that Tennessee is going to host. You've got Christian Collins, Josiah Jervis, Darion Rippey Jr., Bryson Howard, Cody Peck, and I believe out of the three that I mentioned, or out of the five that I mentioned, Christian Collins and Bryson Howard are both 5 stars. Darion Rippey Jr. is a point guard. He's almost a 5-star. And I believe Josiah Jervis, he is actually, I have it pulled up, he is ranked as the number 39 overall player in the country. And Cody Peck is a top 50, top 100 player. So that Duke game, they're going to have a ton of guys in for a big visit. Cody Peck is the number 80 overall player from over in Davidson, North Carolina, at Davidson Day School. So I think we'll start to learn more about the class and how it's going to shape up, how many guys are going to be able to bring in with that night that they have a bunch of guys in for Duke. And depending on how many they can pluck from the group of guys that I just mentioned that are scheduled to visit in October, I think that'll also determine how patient they are with waiting for the summer and seeing who kind of flies under the radar, like we talked about, and who pops up for them to bring in, and then also sets the scene for how many guys they're going to be looking for out of the transfer portal.
Long way to go for the 2026 recruiting class for Tennessee men's basketball, but a nice start here with Ralph Scott, the first commitment for that class for Tennessee. As you said, a top 50 prospect nationally out of IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida. 6'8" is what we're calling him. He's currently listed 6'7", a 6'8" wing. So nice addition to start the class, and a lot to be decided, it sounds like, here in the coming weeks with some important visits coming up. Ben, thanks for being here. Thanks for breaking it all down for us and telling what Tennessee's getting here in Ralph Scott.
Absolutely, and certainly want to encourage people to check out our coverage of Ralph's commitment at 24/7 Sports. Of course, I have some content up at the site with this podcast. I have a commitment story as well, and my own analysis. But Travis Branham also has comments from Ralph on his decision to pick Tennessee. Ralph announced on the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube page. So go back and watch his commitment if you missed that. And then our friend Eric Bossi also has a breakdown of what this fit is for Tennessee, what his commitment means for Tennessee, and just great analysis on Tennessee's first commitment in the class of 2016. And of course, it may be a bye week for the football team, but you're gearing up for a couple of big recruiting weekends as well. And they can find all that coverage up at the site at GoVols247.com right now.
Absolutely. Plenty there, and plenty more on the way in the coming days and weeks as we get into that busy time of year where multiple sports are going on at the same time, and recruiting and football in full swing. It is a fun time of year for sports in general, but fun time to be on the site for sure at GoVols247.com. Ben, thanks for being here. Thanks for filling us in on Ralph and the latest on Tennessee men's basketball recruiting. And we will be here probably before long with another edition of the GoVols 24/7 podcast. For Ben McKee, I'm Ryan Callahan. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you guys soon.